Welcome to Hangxiety with Lisa T. I'm so glad you are joining me on my morning anti-anxiety routine as I dissect whatever issues or news stories from around the world and in space happen to be inhabiting my brain on that particular day. I'm Lisa Timmons, or Timmons Lisa, depending on how you know me, and I like to listen to soothing elevator music while processing some of the most absurd, terrifying, celebrity-obsessed, full-blown late-stage capitalism, climate change, disaster-based news you can possibly imagine, while also narrating over it in a gently informative, classic radio-style DJ voice because, hey, sometimes you just need to hear it that way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hangxiety with Lisa T. I'm Lisa T, and guys, I'm here to talk to you today about freedom of speech in America. So what does that actually mean today? Are we currently living under fascism? And or have our educational and journalistic institutions become so eroded that we wouldn't even know that's what was happening, even if it were? With the lines between entertainment and news blurred in a way that we are more aware of than ever before, how can you be sure who is telling you the truth? And why would they be? Who stands to gain by knowing the real truth? I'm hoping to see if I can provide some historical context to shed some light on what is currently taking place in regards to current discussions of Palestine and Israel with a little history lesson. It all starts with a period in post-World War II American history in Hollywood known as McCarthyism and the Red Scare. So gather round, little children, as I weave a tale of forbidden thoughts, unspeakable truths, and a word that, once given as a label, had the ability to completely stall out a person's career in the entertainment industry and possibly beyond. Sound familiar? McCarthyism, blacklisting in Hollywood, and the impact on political discourse in the entertainment industry, as well as Ronald Reagan's involvement in these matters, are interconnected topics in the history of American politics and entertainment. So here is a comprehensive overview, all right? McCarthyism and the Red Scare. McCarthyism refers to the political practice of making accusations of disloyalty, subversion, or treason without adequate evidence. It was prominent during the early 1950s and was named after Senator Joseph McCarthy. Senator Joseph McCarthy was a U.S. Senator from Wisconsin who became one of the most prominent figures during the Second Red Scare in the United States, a period of intense anti-communist hysteria during the early 1950s. So that would be the era that took place immediately after the end of World War II. McCarthy is best known for his aggressive and often baseless accusations of communist infiltration in the U.S. government, military, and society. He claimed to have lists of supposed communists and used his position to interrogate and investigate people he suspected of being disloyal to the United States. This era, known as McCarthyism, led to the blacklisting of individuals in Hollywood and widespread fear of being labeled a communist. McCarthy's actions had a significant impact on American politics, the entertainment industry, and civil liberties, and he is remembered for the term McCarthyism, which signifies political witch hunts and baseless accusations. The Red Scare was a period of intense anti-communist sentiment in the United States, fueled by the fear of Soviet influence and espionage. So this is the peak of the Cold War. You have a post-World War II world, and the United States and USSR got in a race to the moon. And at this time, there was also fear of nuclear war at every point. So people were very paranoid and very much prepared for the idea that another world war could break out at any point. So The Hollywood 10 were a group of 10 individuals from the entertainment industry who were cited for contempt of Congress in 1947 during the era of the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, investigations into alleged communist influence in Hollywood. They were accused of being associated with or supportive of the Communist Party, and their refusal to cooperate with HUAC's inquiries led to their being cited for contempt. The Hollywood 10 consisted of many screenwriters who were members of the Communist Party, with strong leftist affiliations, including one of the founders of the Screenwriters Guild, and also a member of the Communist Party. Several of them, including Dalton Trumbo, went to prison for refusing to answer HUAC's questions. The refusal of these individuals to cooperate with HUAC was seen as an act of defiance against what they considered an infringement on their First Amendment rights and an intrusion on their personal beliefs and affiliations. Their actions had consequences, including blacklisting and imprisonment, which affected their careers and lives. Essentially, this era flushed out Hollywood's most left-wing writers, effectively taking the tool of mass entertainment out of their hands as punishment for their political views. It also rewarded those who cooperated with the status quo with illustrious careers. Hollywood blacklisting. These House Un-American Activities Committee investigations of alleged communist influence in Hollywood led to the blacklisting of many actors, writers, directors, and other entertainment industry professionals who were accused of having communist affiliations or sympathies. The blacklisting and the fear of being labeled a communist led to a chilling effect, causing many in Hollywood to self-censor and avoid discussing politically sensitive topics. Ronald Reagan's role in SAG. Ronald Reagan, before his political career, served as the president of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, from 1947 to 1952, and again in 1959. He was involved in addressing labor issues within the entertainment industry during this time. Reagan's political career and deregulation. Ronald Reagan transitioned from an actor to a political figure and eventually became the governor of California from 1967 to 1975, before becoming the President of the United States from 1981 until 1989. As president, Reagan pursued deregulation policies, including the reduction of government intervention in various industries, which included entertainment. Impact on the entertainment industry. Reagan's deregulation policies had mixed effects on the entertainment industry. Deregulation encouraged media mergers and acquisitions, leading to the consolidation of entertainment conglomerates, like the massive ones that we see today. This consolidation had implications for media ownership, diversity of voices, and content control. So again, Ronald Reagan, the actor who later became the 40th president of the United States, cooperated with McCarthyism in several ways as a witness before HUAC. In 1947, Ronald Reagan appeared as a friendly witness before the House Un-American Activities Committee. During his testimony, he named individuals whom he suspected of having communist sympathies or associations in the entertainment industry. While he did not accuse anyone of illegal activities, his cooperation with HUAC contributed to the climate of suspicion and fear during the Red Scare. Basically, he was King Snitch. Check it out. Drunk History did a whole episode on it. If you Google it, you'll find it. I'll probably include the link in the show notes. Reagan's role as president of SAG. During his time as SAG president, Reagan cooperated with HUAC and supported efforts to remove alleged communist influences from Hollywood. He was among those who sought to implement a loyalty oath in Hollywood, which many perceived as a means to blacklist suspected communists, testifying for anti-communist causes. Reagan actively participated in anti-communist causes and organizations during the McCarthy era. He served as a friendly witness in several HUAC hearings and publicly voiced his opposition to communism and support for anti-communist investigations. Reagan's involvement in cooperating with McCarthyism was not as prominent or central as some others, but he was certainly a vocal and active participant during the Red Scare. His actions aligned with the prevailing anti-communist sentiment of the time, which led to the blacklisting of many entertainment industry professionals and a chilling effect on political discourse in Hollywood. Later in his career, Reagan transitioned from acting to politics, eventually becoming governor of California and then president of the United States. So you can see the straight line from Hollywood to Washington, D.C. In summary, McCarthyism, the Hollywood blacklist, and the fear of being labeled a communist had a profound and lasting impact on the entertainment industry's willingness to engage with political issues, even to this day. Ronald Reagan, who had a background in Hollywood as well as in politics, played a role in shaping the industry through deregulation over the course of his 2 presidential terms. This complex history demonstrates the interplay between politics, entertainment, and the broader social and cultural context of the mid-20th century in the United States. Media and entertainment consolidation, which has occurred in the United States following deregulation, has raised concerns about its impact on journalism and freedom of speech in several ways. So because there are now just a very small amount of massive companies that own all of the media, entertainment, news, print media, all of it is now digital media, social media, just these massive conglomerates. And so what you get as a result of that is a reduced diversity of voices. As media companies merged and acquired others, there has been a reduction in the number of independent media outlets. This consolidation has led to a homogenization of viewpoints and a concentration of media power in the hands of a few major corporations. Fewer independent voices can limit the diversity of perspectives available to the public, potentially silencing minority viewpoints. Another symptom of this is editorial control and self-censorship. In consolidated media conglomerates, decisions about what stories to cover and how to cover them are often made at the corporate level. This can result in self-censorship and a focus on stories that are commercially viable over those that are politically or socially significant. Journalists may feel pressured to align their reporting with the corporate interests of their employers, potentially stifling investigative journalism and critical reporting. Loss of local journalism. Consolidation has had a particularly detrimental impact on local journalism. As media companies prioritize profits, they often cut back on local reporting, which is essential for holding local governments and businesses accountable. This decline in local journalism can leave communities with reduced access to information about their own regions. Economic pressures on journalism. Consolidation can lead to cost-cutting measures, which often result in layoffs, reduced budgets for newsrooms, and less investment in investigative journalism. This can undermine the quality and depth of reporting. The economic pressures can push news outlets to prioritize sensational or entertainment news over substantive reporting. We also see an impact on freedom of speech. The concentration of media ownership in a few large corporations can limit the range of voices and opinions that have access to mass media platforms. It can also have a chilling effect on the willingness of journalists to report on contentious issues or criticize powerful interests, as they may fear backlash from their employers. Political influence. Media conglomerates with their extensive resources can exert a considerable amount of political influence. This may lead to editorial decisions influenced by political considerations rather than journalistic integrity. The financial and political interests of media owners can also impact the framing and presentation of news stories. In summary, media and entertainment consolidation following deregulation in the United States has raised concerns about the quality and diversity of journalism, as well as its impact on freedom of speech. It can limit the range of voices and perspectives available to the public, reduce local reporting, and exert influence on media content. These issues underscore the importance of robust media regulation and the protection of journalistic independence in a healthy democracy. Standards and practices. Standards and practices, or S&P, also known as broadcast standards and practices or broadcast standards and practices departments, originated within the television industry in the United States. These departments are responsible for reviewing and approving the content of television programs to ensure they comply with legal regulation, industry standards, and network or channel-specific guidelines. The origins of standards and practices can be traced to the early days of television, when broadcasters recognized the need to maintain a level of decency, ethics, and compliance with federal regulations. The National Association of Broadcasters, NAB, played a significant role in the establishment of these standards. Additionally, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, in the United States has regulations that require broadcasters to air content that serves the public interest and maintain certain decency standards. Today, standards and practices departments are typically in-house units within television networks or broadcasting companies. These departments consist of professionals who review scripts, scenes, and content for compliance with legal, ethical, and network-specific standards. Their role is to ensure that the content aligns with government regulations and doesn't violate the network's policies or guidelines. The power to set and enforce these standards comes from a combination of factors. Government regulation. The FCC in the United States has regulations related to broadcast content, particularly concerning obscenity, indecency, and profanity. Networks are required to adhere to these regulations to maintain their broadcasting licenses. Network and channel policies. Individual networks and channels, whether they are broadcast or cable, often have their own guidelines and standards for content. These standards can vary from one network to another. Industry self-regulation. The television industry, through organizations like the NAB, often promotes self-regulation and adherence to ethical and industry-specific standards. Public and viewer feedback. Public and viewer feedback, as well as social and cultural shifts, can influence the development and adaptation of content standards. Advertisers and sponsors may also exert pressure on networks to maintain certain standards to protect their brand image. This is truly the origin of the term getting canceled. Back in the day, if enough viewers wrote letters into their local TV stations or networks in order to either champion their favorite TV shows and save them from cancellation, or were sending angry feedback over a controversial TV series, a show could risk getting canceled from a demonstration of overwhelming public distaste. In summary, standards and practices departments in the television industry originated as a response to the need for ethical and regulatory compliance in broadcasting. Today, they operate within television networks and are responsible for ensuring that content aligns with government regulations and network-specific standards. The power to set and enforce these standards comes from government regulation, industry self-regulation, and the individual policies of networks and channels. So, are we living under a media monopoly? The question of whether tech, entertainment, and broadcast companies should be broken up due to concerns about monopolies is a complex and debated issue. Here are some key points to consider when discussing increased regulation and potential antitrust actions. Market dominance. Some of the largest tech and entertainment companies have gained significant market dominance, which can stifle competition. Companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, now Meta, and Disney have grown to a scale where they exert considerable influence over their respective industries. Reduced competition. Market consolidation can lead to reduced competition, which, in turn, can limit consumer choice and lead to higher prices or lower quality services. This can negatively impact innovation and access to media and technology. Data privacy and security concerns. Large tech companies often collect vast amounts of user data, raising concerns about privacy and data security. Regulations may be needed to protect individuals' rights and ensure data is handled responsibly. Content and information control. In the entertainment and media sector, consolidation can lead to a concentration of control over content production and distribution. This can influence the types of content available and may limit diverse voices and perspectives. Regulatory framework. The government's role in regulating these industries is essential. Antitrust laws exist to prevent monopolistic behavior and protect competition, and regulators like the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and the Department of Justice, DOJ, are tasked with enforcing these laws. Balancing act. The decision to break up companies or impose stricter regulations should strike a balance between fostering innovation, protecting competition, and addressing public concerns. Some argue that strict regulation could stifle innovation and harm the economy. Others might argue that we could end up in the situation that we are currently in, which is a hellscape. Political and legal challenges. Pursuing antitrust actions against major corporations can be politically and legally challenging. These companies often have significant resources to mount legal defenses and lobbying efforts. Global implications. Many of these tech and media giants operate globally, and regulatory actions in one country may have global implications. In recent years, there have been discussions and investigations into the antitrust practices of several tech companies, leading to calls for increased regulation. However, whether or not these companies should be broken up is a matter of legal and political debate, and decisions would need to consider the specific circumstances of each company and industry. Ultimately, the question of increased regulation and potential antitrust actions should be approached with careful consideration of the impact on competition, innovation, consumer interests, and the broader economic and societal landscape. Public opinion, legislative action, and regulatory decisions will play a significant role in shaping the future of these industries. What purpose do antitrust measures serve? Antitrust measures that the government could take to address concerns about the market dominance of tech, entertainment, and broadcast companies may include the breakup of companies. One of the most significant antitrust actions is breaking up a company into smaller, independent entities. This could be done to reduce a company's market power and promote competition. For example, the breakup of Standard Oil in the early 20th century is a historical example of this. Divestiture. Similar to a breakup, divestiture involves requiring a company to sell off certain assets or subsidiaries to reduce its market control. This can be a more targeted approach than a complete breakup. Regulation and oversight. Government regulators can impose regulations and oversight on companies' business practices. This may include restrictions on mergers and acquisitions, ensuring open access to platforms, or monitoring data privacy and security practices. Antitrust lawsuits. Government agencies like the Department of Justice, the DOJ, and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, can bring antitrust lawsuits against companies that engage in anti-competitive behavior. These lawsuits can lead to court-mandated remedies, such as restrictions on business practices or financial penalties. Data privacy regulations. Implementing or strengthening data privacy regulations can be a targeted approach to address concerns related to the collection and use of user data by tech companies. Transparency requirements. Requiring companies to be more transparent about their algorithms, content moderation, and advertising practices can help address concerns about biased content and influence. Market entry and access. Promoting policies that make it easier for new competitors to enter markets dominated by large corporations. This could include facilitating access to essential infrastructure or technologies. Review of past mergers and acquisitions. Revisiting and potentially undoing past mergers and acquisitions that have contributed to market consolidation and anti-competitive behavior. Exclusivity and anti-steering prohibitions. Prohibiting practices that restrict competitors' access to customers or limit the choices available to customers. Protecting small business. Implementing measures to protect and support small businesses that may be adversely affected by the dominance of larger corporations. Global cooperative. Given that many tech and media companies operate globally, coordinating antitrust efforts with international partners and organizations can be important in addressing cross-border issues. It's important to note that the specific measures taken would depend on the circumstance of each case and the applicable antitrust laws. Antitrust actions require thorough investigations, legal proceedings, and often significant political and public support. Antitrust legislation and actions in the United States are typically initiated by the government, and, historically speaking, several key entities and individuals can be involved. The executive branch. The President of the United States can play a significant role in initiating antitrust actions. The Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission, both executive branch agencies, are responsible for enforcing antitrust laws. The President can appoint leaders of these agencies who share the administration's priorities, influencing the direction and emphasis of antitrust enforcement. The Attorney General. The Attorney General, who is part of the President's cabinet, oversees the Department of Justice. The Attorney General can direct the DOJ to investigate and take legal action against companies engaged in anti-competitive behavior. Members of Congress. While members of Congress do not directly enforce antitrust laws, they have the power to shape antitrust policy through legislative actions. They can introduce bills and pass laws that modify existing antitrust regulations, provide additional resources to antitrust enforcement agencies, or address specific antitrust issues. Congressional committees, such as the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee, often hold hearings to scrutinize the actions of large corporations and assess the need for regulatory changes. Government agencies. The DOJ and FTC, as independent regulatory bodies, have the authority to investigate and take legal action against companies violating antitrust laws. Leadership within these agencies, as well as career civil servants, play a key role in initiating and pursuing antitrust cases. And last but not least, private citizens and organizations. While private citizens and organizations cannot directly initiate antitrust legislation or actions, they can play a role in raising awareness and advocating for antitrust enforcement. Public pressure, advocacy groups, and consumer complaints can influence government actions. Private citizens and organizations can also serve as plaintiffs in private antitrust lawsuits, seeking remedies for antitrust violations. Historically, antitrust enforcement has often been initiated by government agencies and led by the President and the Attorney General. However, congressional involvement and public advocacy have also played important roles in shaping antitrust policy and priorities. The specific circumstances of each case and the prevailing political and legal climate can influence who takes the lead in initiating antitrust actions. The war of information on social media. In the war of opinion taking place today, mainstream American media conglomerates have very consistently been portraying Israel in a favorable light, with few exceptions. However, social media has put the power in the hands of those capable of getting on-the-ground images and videos disseminated to the outside world. To combat that, many celebrities in Hollywood have been actively promoting their support for Israel, with 700 notable Hollywood figures signing an open letter in support of Israel. This was reported on October 12th and was probably the first time Hollywood spoke openly following the October 7th attack by Hamas. This letter was signed by Gal Gadot, Jerry Seinfeld, Jamie Lee Curtis, Chris Pine, Mayim Bialik, Liev Schreiber, Amy Schumer, and Michael Douglas, among more than 700 other celebrities and entertainment executives who were standing in support of Israel, according to The Hollywood Reporter. They signed an open letter created by the nonprofit organization Creative Community for Peace, condemning the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas attack on Israel and calling for the return of hostages. As a counterpoint to that position, there was an article that came out several days later in Variety featuring Joaquin Phoenix, Cate Blanchett, and more stars demanding Joe Biden call for the Israel-Gaza ceasefire, saying compassion must prevail. In addition, Tilda Swinton, among 2,000 plus artists calling for Gaza ceasefire. I'll include a link to this article as well as the other articles that I have mentioned previously in the show notes. Renowned actors Tilda Swinton, Charles Dance, Steve Coogan, Miriam Margolyes, Peter Mullen, Maxine Peake, and Khalid Abdallah are among more than 2,000 people from across the arts who have signed a letter saying that, quote, our governments are not only tolerating war crimes, but aiding and abetting them. The artists, including Robert Del Naja and playwrights Tanika Gupta and Abby Spallin, condemn, quote, every act of violence against civilians and every infringement of international law, whoever perpetrates them. And as many were watching people's Instagram accounts closely, especially those famous individuals, to see whether or not they would post a flag in support of which side for which they were advocating, and Gigi Hadid, a model whose father is Palestinian, found herself being publicly pressured by the Instagram account of the actual official government of Israel to openly express pro-Israel messaging on her account. I wondered somewhat jokingly if she would be able to block Israel on Instagram, but then I remembered a surreal fact I recently learned, which is that it is illegal to boycott Israel in the state of California. In fact, it is currently illegal since 2021 in 35 states in the United States to boycott Israel publicly. Curious, I researched the logic behind these laws. The Combating BDS Act. The legality of state-level anti-boycott laws that prohibit individuals or entities from boycotting a particular nation, such as Israel, is a complex and controversial issue. These laws have been enacted in some U.S. states, and they have raised concerns about their potential impact on freedom of speech and other constitutional rights. Here's an overview of the key points involved. Constitutional freedoms. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects freedom of speech as a fundamental right. It allows individuals to express their opinions, including through peaceful protest and boycotts. Any law that restricts this freedom must meet strict scrutiny, meaning it must serve a compelling state interest and be narrowly tailored to achieve that interest. Anti-boycott laws. Some U.S. states, 35 in fact, have passed laws that aim to combat boycotts against Israel. These laws often prohibit government entities from doing business with companies that participate or support certain boycotts. For example, Texas, Kansas, and other states have passed anti-boycott laws that target the boycott, divestment, and sanctions (BDS) movement, which advocates for economic pressure on Israel. Challenges to anti-boycott laws. Critics argue that these anti-boycott laws may infringe on freedom of speech. They claim that such laws penalize individuals or entities for expressing their political views through boycotts, which is a form of political speech and protest. This has led to legal challenge in some cases. Legal interpretation. Courts have varied in their interpretation of anti-boycott laws. Some courts have upheld such laws while others have struck them down or limited their application. The outcome often depends on the specific language of the law and how it is applied. Federal legislation. In 2020, the United States Congress passed the Combating BDS Act, which does not explicitly criminalize boycotts, but reaffirms the legality of state anti-boycott laws. The passage of this federal legislation has also been controversial. In summary, the legality of state-level anti-boycott laws is a matter of ongoing legal and constitutional debate. While the government can regulate certain forms of economic conduct, including those that involve boycotts, it must do so within the bounds of the Constitution and protect the fundamental right to freedom of speech. Legal challenges to these laws often focus on whether they unduly restrict this right. Ultimately, the interpretation of the law and its constitutionality can vary from case to case and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Legislation targeting boycotts or divestment related to Israel is relatively unique. There are not, to my knowledge, any other foreign nation-specific anti-boycott laws in the United States that are comparable to the ones targeting Israel. It's important to note that while some states have enacted anti-BDS laws, they have faced legal challenges, and the application and interpretation of these laws can be subject to change over time. And the first step to figuring out whether or not our freedom of speech is in danger is realizing that this sort of thing is taking place to begin with. Only then can we speak more openly and frankly when we have questions about why things work the way that they do, without fear of censure. In the show notes, I'm going to add a list of various social media accounts that you can follow for reliable news and information regarding the situation in Palestine. I have learned since my Instagram account exploded in growth in followers almost exactly a year ago when I posted my first celebrity lip dub mocking Gwyneth Paltrow that went viral, who the accounts are that I trust and who the charlatans are. I've made Instagram friends who I converse with more regularly than I do with anyone IRL. In a way, by going so technological with my social interactions, I've gone back to my good old-fashioned human instinct of knowing whose information I can trust based on our mutual reputations and history and communications. Truly, I'm getting so much good information by word of mouth that I can't help but feel that in this way, technology has allowed me to do what I do best as a human, which is relate to other humans. You can do that as well by just following your instincts. And while having this ability to experience such empathy for people I have never met can at times be overwhelming and even physically painful, the fact that it allows me to experience friendship in a way I never knew possible, built exclusively on shared values and interests, eliminating geography as a factor for emotional closeness, makes it so incredibly worth any of those lows. On a final side note, just so you guys know, sometimes I don't unfollow people solely for the purpose of maintaining social media diplomatic channels, because this is a war of opinion, guys. And I intend on our side winning that war in the long run. If someone feels more likely to listen to what I have to say when they see that I've left the door open just a little bit to a conversation, and I think it's worth engaging, then, I'm always going to take that chance. With that, take care of yourselves. Make sure you're getting as much sleep as your body tells you it needs. Eat something that fills you up. Drink plenty of water and get lots of hugs. Sleep well tonight. Bye.